Good day, everyone, and welcome to the case discussion on acute dental abscess. We would be discussing diagnosis and treatment planning for this case, and this is done together by myself, Dr. Lahari, and Dr. Philip. Right. The aim is that you understand how to do diagnosis and formulate treatment planning, as well as understand the importance of case documentation. A 32-year-old male patient visited the clinic with the chief complaint of pain and swelling in the upper front tooth since 5 days. He gave a brief history of trauma due to fall at the age of 10, which was more than 20 years ago. That's how he remembers it. And then occasional pain in the front tooth only started 5 years ago. The patient recalls having a swelling that he is having on the day that he presented to us, similar swelling 3 years ago, which subsided after antibiotics. Recently, he has been having severe pain associated with the swelling of the face and mild fever since around 5 days. The visual analog scale was 9/10, which makes us understand that it was severe pain. The patient did have temporary relief with over-the-counter painkillers, but then, of course, he didn't have a complete relief of pain, and that's why he was visiting us on the day that he came. He did notice change in the color of the tooth since the last 4 or 5 years. This is the clinical picture of the patient, where you can see that there is a diffuse swelling, not very notable, but could have been more clearly seen on clinical examination on the left side of the cheek region. And intraorally there was vestibular obliteration. So this is the patient trying to pull his lips up, upper lip up himself, because he was in pain, and then there was definite vestibular obliteration. The 2-1, which is the tooth in interest, is discolored and also showing signs of fracture, and it was classified as an Ellis class 4 fracture. Discoloration in relation to the tooth 2-1, but definitely we would need to investigate further, and that's the reason why imaging was done. So the diagnostic intraoral periapical radiograph surprisingly showed that both 2-1 and 2-2 had an ill-defined radiolucency at the apex. So, but clinically only 2-1 was discolored and 2-2 was not really showing any discoloration. Yet on the imaging we could see that both the roots of the 2-1 and 2-2 were involved with the periapical abscess. Then how do we arrive at a provisional diagnosis now? The patient is having features of acute abscess clinically. He's come to us with a swelling which is just of 5 days in duration. Yet on the radiograph you see that there is evidence of chronic abscess, because there's definite ill-defined large radiolucency. And then he has already given us clinically a previous history of swelling, a similar episode. So putting all of these together, we arrived at a final or a provisional diagnosis of 2-1 and 2-2 being non-vital with acute exacerbation of chronic dentoalveolar abscess. Now this could also be called as a Phoenix abscess, but the more appropriate terminology would be acute exacerbation of chronic dentoalveolar abscess. For the treatment plan, 2-1 and 2-2 were both indicated for root canal treatment, followed by prosthetic rehabilitation. So the treatment aspect will be dealt with Dr. Philip in the next few slides. Thank you.
So how about how to go about with your endodontic therapy? So these are the basic instruments which are used. So you can see your K files, you can see your endomotor. So this is the cordless endomotor, which helps us to use the rotary files as well. Our basic diagnostic instruments, that is your mouth mirror, the probe, the tweezer, and the spoon excavators, and and of course we have the irrigants, which are going to be useful for flushing out the exudate, that is your saline, and of course we have the antimicrobial ones, that is primarily your sodium hypochlorite, and the antibacterial, which is your chlorhexidine. Then of course we have the burr, which is most importantly used for the access opening. This is the endo access burr. So we commonly use the endo access burr to perform the access opening. In case you find it difficult to control your access opening with the endo access burr, you can always use a small round burr in the case you are fearful of over preparation of the tooth. And once you have actually established the access, if you want to refine the walls of your cavity, all you need to do is switch over to the endo Z burr, because it is a it has a non-cutting tip, because of which the chances of perforation are significantly lesser. So since the teeth were vital, this is why diagnosis is very important, because it was a chronic periapical abscess. There was actually no need to give local anesthesia. And of course the patient also had a swelling which was present both intraorally and extraorally. So studies have also shown that if you administer LA into the region of a swelling, because the area of the swelling is already acidic, your local anesthesia actually cannot dissociate in the area and start its mechanism of action, because of which the LA will also not be very effective. So because of that, and because the teeth were already non-vital, of course we confirmed the vitality using the pulp sensibility test, that is your electronic pulp tester, and the cold test. We concluded that the teeth are non-vital, so we proceeded without giving local anesthesia. So as soon as the access opening was performed on the tooth 2-1, we could see that exudate was discharging from the canal. So like I mentioned earlier, maximum drainage happens in the first half hour, and that increases as and when you perform your cleaning and shaping. So over here you can actually see that with respect to the tooth 2-2, we were able to extirpate the pulp as a whole. But because in the tooth 2-1 the pulp was totally necrosed, only pulpal remnants could be seen when we were flushing it out with the help of your irrigants, that is your saline, sodium hypochlorite, and chlorhexidine. So once we finished the cleaning and shaping, using the instruments, that is the K file was used to estimate the working length and to create the initial glide path. The glide path is nothing but the path which is created by the early or the small size files, so that your larger size files can follow. Then the cleaning and shaping was done using the rotary files and the endomotor. So once the cleaning and shaping was done, we preferred to give a closed dressing. So this closed dressing constitutes your intracanal medicament, that is your calcicure, that is calcium hydroxide, a cotton pellet, so that the cavitron, that is your closed dressing, does not enter into the pulp chamber and seal it off. So once cavitron sets, it becomes quite hard. So retrieval from the canal is going to be really difficult. So to block off the canal, what we do is we place a cotton pellet, and then we give our cavitron, which is nothing but zinc oxide eugenol. Yeah. So the reason why we no longer advocate open dressings. So basically, maybe around 20 to 50 years ago, when a patient used to walk in with a swelling, we used to give, open dressings. That is, you only block the canal orifices with cotton pellets, and you recall the patient every 2 days until the swelling subsides. So now the principle on the school of thought has changed, because we do not want to risk the possibility of reinfection of the canals after you have sterilized it using your root canal irrigants. We give a closed dressing. Yeah, so then we are able to recall the patient after 1 week, and of course we keep him on antibiotics and painkillers so that the infection is combated. So 1 week later, the patient reported, and as you can see, the swelling has subsided significantly. The pain has also disappeared. The patient is happy. So what we do is we estimate the working length. That time it was an emergency opening. So what we did was we just, on the day of the visit, we just did the access opening and we did maximum amount of cleaning and shaping as possible to facilitate the drainage. So the working length estimation was done. It appeared a little short in the radiograph, as you can see. So what we have done is we re-estimated, we increased it by 0.5 mm, and then of course after that we did the cleaning and shaping. So now we were able to do the cleaning and shaping till the desired working length, and we used the rotary pro taper file system, of course after creating the glide path using our K files. Irrigation, of course, meticulous irrigation was done. So that is what helps to flush out the exudate and the bacteria and their byproducts, the toxins, and create a sterile root canal environment. So after that, since the swelling had subsided, what we did was we gave Vitapex closed dressing. So now since it is a slow release and slow dissociating calcium hydroxide, the review of the patient is done after 1 month. So now there are various schools of thought. Nowadays, the studies also show that the intracanal medicament is no longer required to be extruded out beyond the confines of the root canal apex. But what I have observed is that if your root canal, your intracanal medicament actually goes into the site of the lesion, although there is a risk of periapical scarring and also a risk of irritation for the patient because of an intracanal medicament acting as a foreign body outside in the periapical region, what I have observed over the years is that it causes better healing of the periapical lesion, because of which a little bit of intracanal medicament is going out beyond the confines of the periapex is not totally frowned upon. And of course, this is an operator's choice, and many operators, different operators have different schools of thought. So this is something which I follow on a personal level. So after a month, what we can see is the patient came in after a month, and we can see that the intracanal medicament is still intact, and we can see that there is a little bit of intracanal medicament which is still present beyond the confines of the root canal system, but we cannot appreciate any bone formation yet. So what we do is we advise another 30-day period of a wait and watch. And since the closed dressing was intact, there is no need to actually remove the closed dressing and replenish your intracanal medicament, because we can see that the cavitron is still in place, and we can see that the canals are still filled with intracanal medicament. And there is, of course, a little bit which is extruded beyond. Most of it has resolved, but still I cannot appreciate the bone formation. So we wait and watch for another 30 days. So what happens in the next visit? So now after another 30 days, so we have to be patient. So patience is a virtue. We have to be patient. We wait for the body of the patient to take its time to heal, and we can only help it by providing the necessary medication. So of course, we gave 1 round of antibiotics, that is your normal amoxicillin. We gave it only for a period of 5 days, and 500 mg 3 times a day for 5 days, and we advised painkillers only if the patient had pain. So probably for the first 2 to 3 days he had pain, after which he stopped his painkillers. So finally, when the patient came in Jan, the patient was totally asymptomatic like before, and now we can actually see the trabeculae formation starting in the area of the periapical lesion. So this is a very good sign of bone healing. So what we decided is that we remove the entire intracanal medicament, and we inform the patient that it is now time to obturate. So what we do is we place the master cones and we take an X-ray, and of course you have to irrigate as well. So the best way to remove your intracanal medicament, that is your Vitapex, is you can use your K files, you can use the rotary files, you can even use H files, to scrape off parts of the intracanal medicament which are stuck to the walls of the canal. Only thing you have to use as a precaution while using H files is that if there is canal curvature, you never force the file in, because H files are quite brittle and they're quite stiff. So the chances of separation of the instrument are high, especially in the areas of curvature. So these teeth, the canals were relatively straight, so we didn't face any problems. So then what we did is we removed the intracanal medicament, placed the master cone, took an X-ray, everything looks good. So here you can actually observe the bone healing has happened. We can no longer see a large periapical lesion. The trabecular formation has started. Good time to obturate. So then we proceeded with the obturation. So now, after the obturation, we also finished the post-endo restoration. Patient was totally asymptomatic, so no reason to delay the post-endo restoration. We don't want the risk of exposure of the gutta percha into the oral environment if the temporary restoration dislodges. And then, of course, we advise the patient for prosthetic rehabilitation, that is to get crowns for the teeth. Of course, it is a class 1 access opening, so the proximal surfaces were intact, so the tooth is still strong. However, because the tooth was already discolored, and because after root canal treatment the teeth tend to become a little weak and brittle, and the chances of chipping off of the teeth during mastication is always possible, because of which we always advise crowns. The patient, being a little financially compromised, decided to get the crowns done later and will report to us once he's ready to get the crowns. So our job is done. We have treated the patient. Patient is asymptomatic. We can appreciate good healing, and we have given our advice on getting the crowns done. Patient was informed of the possibility of fractures of the crowns in case the crowns are not done. So we have safeguarded ourselves as well. So that's very important. And patient education is also of prime importance. So this was it with the treatment plan. I hope you guys were able to understand a little bit and gain a little bit of knowledge with this short presentation. If there are any doubts, please do feel free to get back to us. Okay, so take care, guys. Thank you.
Okay, so that's it from Dr. Philip and myself, and the take-home message from this case would be to understand the clinical implication of this condition, as well as formulate treatment planning and the importance of case documentation. Thank you for listening.